because what Israel is fighting terror today, people will find tomorrow terror in their doorsteps if they don't stand with us today.
I guess what I have a little hard to understand is that the UN seems virulently against Israel, and at least in this round, it seems, it was started by Hamas with the kidnapping of those three and the murder. I mean, that's where this all began. And you've got Israel agreeing to several ceasefires, even willing to agree to the extension on Friday of a ceasefire, and Hamas is just getting pummeled like crazy. Almost nothing is left, and they still want to fight on. So I don't get what Hamas gets out of this, other than sort of the PR of the United Nations behind them.
Well, that's absolutely right, and people forget the following. Look, Greta, Israel wants peace. We disengaged completely out of Gaza, never to look back into Gaza. We left Gaza, we gave them greenhouses, which they burned to the core. We opened Gaza. From our point of view, the idea was to have Gaza flourishing as an amazing place, because the equation is quite simple. It's going to be quiet in Israel, it's going to be quiet in Gaza. So in the sense, Hamas wants to destroy the state of Israel, and for us this looks like something very simple. We have a right to defend ourselves. If rockets fly over to major cities in Israel, you don't have to have an IQ of a rocket scientist to understand that if rockets fall on your head, you're allowed to defend yourselves.
I'm curious the behind the scenes in the UN. When you run into Secretary General Ban Ki-moon, he has just said that your country is committing war crimes. When you run into him in the hallways or something, what's the exchange like? Do you look at each other? Do you talk to each other? Do you have a casual conversation?
Oh yes, we talk to each other, and the Secretary General is a respectable, good person, but the people around him, look, you have the amazing numbers at the United Nations. You have 22 countries of the Arab League, 57 countries of the Organization of Islamic Countries, and the non-alignment movement. They can practically get every resolution through with mere numbers. For example, they can decide that terror tunnels are just irrigation systems, and rockets flying into Israel are shooting stars. I mean, this is absolutely absurd. We have in that organization at the United Nations abusing of human rights, pointing fingers at Israel.
But in watching this, like today, I mean, even if there's a resolution, condemning Israel or whatever, I'm trying to think, like, what does it even mean? Is it just talk? Because even if you jump across the pond to the International Criminal Court, they've got indictments for genocide for the president of Sudan, and nothing happens. So it seems like there's this whole international discussion and talk, which doesn't mean a whole lot, but what really matters is what's happening on the ground here, and Hamas is just getting pummeled, and so are the civilians, and I don't know why they won't just, come to the table at this point.
Well, Hamas is to blame for everything that takes place there. Hamas is committing, a double war crime, using people as its human shields and shooting missiles from civilian areas, not just kindergarten, schools, mosques, at Israeli cities, those terror tunnels. All their own purpose is to maim, kidnap, and murder Israelis. And at the end of the day, look at this. Israel, all we want is really to have peace with our neighbors. We've shown that in the past with Anwar al-Sadat in Egypt, when there was a serious partner with the late King Hussein in Jordan. Israel is willing to make peace, but we cannot make peace with an organization that has a clear mission to obliterate Israel. So in the sense, we in Israel feel today that we are on the front line, like we did 25 years ago when we began checking people at airports. You remember, people told us, hey, come on, how can you do that? Human rights, privacy. And look at the world now, today, understanding that those terrorists are trying to do everything they can to destroy the values that we all cherish. And we're standing up, the state of Israel and the people of Israel, not just to defend ourselves, but to defend the values that we as Western communities really cherish and have fought for many years.
I want to take the last word on. I'm just harking back to what Prime Minister Netanyahu said, that the ceasefire that Hamas has now accepted, at least on Friday morning, that had they accepted that ceasefire earlier, 90% of the deaths wouldn't have occurred, which is, just stunning. This is all so terribly distressing. But I'm taking the last word on that. Ambassador, I hope you come back, sir.
Thank you.